Look at this map. 40 million people live on the shores of these 5 lakes. 8 US states and 2 Canadian provinces share their water. The largest iron ore deposits in North America sit on their western shore. The coal fields that smelted it sit on their eastern shore. A single canal connects them to the Atlantic Ocean, and within 500 miles of that water, the United States built the entire arsenal that won World War II. None of that was planned, none of it was policy, none of it was luck. It was geography. A glacier retreated 10,000 years ago, left 5 connected lakes in exactly the right place, and any civilization that started here was almost certainly going to end up running the world. This is how the geography of the Great Lakes made the United States ridiculously OP. The Laurentide ice sheet was 2 miles thick. When it retreated, it carved 5 connected basins into the bedrock of North America. Lake Superior alone covers 31,700 square miles, larger than the entire country of Austria. Together, the 5 lakes hold 21% of all surface freshwater on Earth and 84% of North America's supply. Lake Superior alone contains half of that. And they are not sitting at the edge of the continent. They sit at the latitude of Paris to the north and Barcelona to the south. This is not remote Arctic water. This is the temperate heart of a continent. The entire system drains northeast through one outlet, the St. Lawrence River, straight to the Atlantic. That single drainage pattern defines everything that follows. Between Lake Erie and Lake Ontario, the land drops 326 feet. At the heart of that drop sits Niagara Falls, and the falls makes direct sail navigation between the 2 lakes impossible. That single geographic fact changed everything downstream. On the southern and eastern shores of the lakes, the water moderates temperature and creates a microclimate belt that extends growing seasons by weeks compared to land 50 miles inland. Michigan produces more variety of fruit than almost any other state in the country. The Niagara Peninsula is wine country. Ohio's northern shore has one of the longest growing seasons in the Midwest. The lakes do not just sit beside fertile land, they extend and protect it. And then there is Sault Ste. Marie. Lake Superior sits 21 feet higher than Lake Huron. A natural rapid separates them, impassable by large vessels. The Sioux Locks, built in 1855, are the only commercial connection between the 2 lakes. They move more cargo annually than the Panama Canal. The Pentagon classifies them as critical national infrastructure. If they fail, U.S. steel production runs out of iron ore within weeks. The lakes did not just sit near resources. They sat at the exact center of the greatest natural resource concentration in North American history. 3 iron ore ranges sit on the western and southern shores of Lake Superior. The Mesabi Range in Minnesota, the Marquette Iron Range in Michigan, and the Gogebic Range along the Michigan-Wisconsin border. Together, they supplied over 80% of U.S. iron ore during the Industrial Age. The Mesabi Range is still the largest iron ore deposit in North America. Ships are loading at Duluth right now. The Keweenaw Peninsula in Michigan triggered the first major mining boom in U.S. history in the 1840s. At its peak, it produced 75% of all U.S. copper, the material that made telegraph wire, electrical wire, and the electrification of America possible. The Great Lakes states held the largest white pine forests in North America. Between 1850 and 1890, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Minnesota produced the majority of lumber that built the entire Midwest. Chicago was the lumber distribution center for the whole prairie interior. All of it moved cheaply by water. The basin also contains massive limestone deposits, the third ingredient in steel production, used as flux in smelting. Iron ore, coal, limestone, and water, all 4 ingredients within the same connected water highway. No other geography on Earth has this combination in one system. The Appalachian coal fields sit at the eastern end of the water route in Pennsylvania, Ohio, and West Virginia. The geography brings iron ore east to meet coal, not the other way around. The water does the work. And the same glacier that carved the lakes deposited deep fertile soil across the Great Plains, 3 to 10 feet deep in places. The Corn Belt, running through Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, and Iowa, drains into the Great Lakes and Mississippi system. The breadbasket and the water highway are geographically inseparable. A continent full of resources means nothing if you cannot move them. And this is where the geography does something no other place on Earth can match. Approximately 40 million Americans and Canadians live within the Great Lakes Basin, roughly 10% of the entire U.S. population clustered around 5 lakes. The region generates approximately $6 trillion in GDP annually. That makes it the third largest economy on Earth if measured as a standalone entity, behind only the full United States and China. None of this exists at this scale for any reason other than geography. Chicago sits where the Great Lakes system meets the Mississippi drainage basin, the natural transfer point between 2 continental water systems. Detroit sits at the strait between Lake Erie and Lake Huron. Detroit literally means strait in French. It was the geographic control point of the entire eastern lake system. Cleveland sits where the Cuyahoga River meets Lake Erie, a natural harbor adjacent to Appalachian coal. Buffalo was the western terminus of the Erie Canal, the gateway between the industrial interior and the Atlantic world. Milwaukee sits on Lake Michigan as the gateway to the Wisconsin agricultural interior. Toronto, on Lake Ontario, is Canada's industrial and financial capital, grown on the same water logic. Pittsburgh sits where 3 rivers meet to form the Ohio, which flows to the Mississippi, connected to the whole system via water. Every one of these cities exists where it does for a single reason: water access. Now put the resources in the cities together, and then ask what happens when you connect all of it with water. Moving goods by water costs 10 to 30 times less per ton mile than by road or rail. That single fact built the industrial United States. The Erie Canal opened in 1825, 363 miles of engineered water highway built around Niagara Falls. Geography had made the direct route impossible, so engineers cut around it. When the canal opened, shipping a ton of goods from Buffalo to New York dropped from $100 to $10. Within 10 years, New York City became the largest city in North America, entirely because it was now connected to the Great Lakes industrial interior. The St. Lawrence Seaway allows ocean vessels to sail 2,340 miles inland from the Atlantic and dock in Chicago. The Great Lakes are not a landlocked system. They are an inland ocean with Atlantic access. No equivalent network exists anywhere on Earth. Europe's rivers are fragmented and drain into different seas. Africa's major rivers have waterfalls near their mouths. China's rivers run east to west. America's system is unique, and it centers on the Great Lakes. Iron ore from Duluth plus cheap water transport plus limestone plus Appalachian coal from Cleveland and Pittsburgh equals steel. Steel built railroads. Railroads opened the Great Plains. The Great Plains became an agricultural superpower. Agricultural surplus generated capital. Capital funded industrial reinvestment. Every link in that chain runs through the lakes. The lakes also supplied the production process itself. Steel, auto manufacturing, food processing, all water-intensive industries. The Great Lakes provided both the highway and the fuel. Every piece of this is geography. None of it is genius. When Franklin Roosevelt called America the arsenal of democracy in 1940, he was describing the Great Lakes Basin. Detroit's auto plants converted to war production in 90 days. By 1944, the Willow Run plant was producing 1 B-24 bomber every 63 minutes. The United States produced more war material in 4 years than Germany, Japan, and Italy combined. The majority of it came from within 500 miles of Lake Erie. Germany had the Ruhr Valley, but no water highway connecting raw materials at scale. Japan had virtually no domestic iron ore. The United States had a fully integrated industrial system built over a century on the greatest connected waterway in the world. The geography had to already exist before the war started. It did. The industrial system built on top of it had been taking shape since 1825. The Great Lakes won World War II before a single shot was fired. 99% of the water in the Great Lakes is fossil water, ancient glacier melt. Only 1% replenishes annually. It is a one-time inheritance. The Ogallala Aquifer that waters the U.S. Great Plains is projected to be 70% depleted by 2070, with southern regions running dry far sooner. When it fails at scale, the Great Lakes Basin becomes the only large-scale freshwater system in North America capable of supporting industrial agriculture. 40 million people currently drink from the Great Lakes. The 1909 Boundary Waters Treaty and the 2008 Great Lakes Compact, signed by 8 U.S. states and 2 Canadian provinces, form a legal fortress around the most valuable geography on the continent. 4 of the 5 lakes are shared with Canada, making this a two-nation geopolitical asset with governance that will be increasingly contested as freshwater scarcity accelerates globally. The geography that won the 20th century is about to decide who controls the 21st. A glacier 2 miles thick retreated 10,000 years ago. It carved 5 connected lakes at the latitude of Paris and Barcelona. It deposited the most fertile soil on Earth around them. It left iron ore to the west, coal to the east, and a single outlet to the Atlantic to the northeast. The climate buffer it created extended growing seasons across the continent's most productive farmland. At Sault Ste. Marie, it left a natural choke point that today moves more cargo than the Panama Canal. No empire chose this, no planner designed it. The Erie Canal connected it, the steel industry ignited it, the Second World War proved it, and 21% of the planet's irreplaceable surface freshwater, non-renewable, legally protected, shared between 2 nations, is not a chapter that closes quietly. 5 lakes, 1 glacier, the rest was inevitable.